inorganic growth, organic growth, strength of team. The fourth is integration.
Today, my guest, founder, former CEO, and now chairman of King Risk Partners, Chad King. How are you today, buddy?
Hey, Al. It's good to see you. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Very excited to have you today. Been looking forward to this.
Me too. Thank you.
Well, let's start from the top. How we met, right? Obviously, through your first and original, because now you have two private equity groups, BHMS, my good friend Kevin Angelis, who did one of these podcasts with me early on. And obviously, you got a great story to tell here, which I want all the viewers to hear, because you've done an exceptional job in a short period of time of building this company. Talked to Kevin one day, was telling me about what he was doing. I had him in a few investments before that, Hild, and now it's called Trucordia, used to be PCF. And he had invested in King and was telling me about you. And I said, well, when the time's right, why don't you make the introduction? And it got to a point where, you were getting some good traction. I don't want to steal your thunder, but I know you started with Kevin several years ago at about $4 million, and you're, well over 100 now, and done an excellent job of building this. But Kevin said, let me introduce you to Chad. We immediately hit it off when we got to talk. And, obviously ever since, you've been very involved in our processes. Every single person we put you in front of really likes you as a person, which is everything, right? It's your reputation's everything. And we've done some good deals together and continue to look at a lot of good deals. So, I've been very, very excited to work with you and very, very much want to continue this good run we're on and the run you are on with King that I think's been exceptional. So I'm sure people would love to hear your story.
That's kind of you to say, Al. Thanks. My dad started King in 1974, 2 years before I was born. I was born in 1976. I turned 49 in July of this year. When I was a little kid, I heard my parents talk about insurance at home. And I heard them use big words like deductible and premium. None of that meant anything to me at the time, but I heard mom and dad talk about it. I played sports when I was a kid, like you did. I played basketball and I played baseball. I was nominated for Mr. Basketball for the state of Florida. I did not win, and I was drafted to play pro baseball my senior year of high school. I was 17 when I graduated from high school. I played baseball at the University of Kansas in Lawrence, Kansas. I was twice a team captain of my college baseball team. And after undergrad, I decided to stop pursuing baseball. I moved back to Florida. I moved to Jacksonville. I got my first real job at Merrill Lynch in Jacksonville. I got my Series 7 and some securities licenses there. I learned a little bit about the securities business. And I also enrolled in graduate school. I got my MBA at the University of North Florida, also in Jacksonville. And when I graduated, I moved to Los Angeles. I took a job with a firm called Lehman Brothers. You may have heard of Lehman Brothers. If you have, you know how the story ends. Mm-hmm. I worked at Lehman until 2008. 2008 happened, and I had a now what moment. And what I decided to do was move back to Gainesville, where I grew up, where King is headquartered and has always been headquartered. And I went to work at my parents' insurance agency. We were about 6 employees at that time, about $600,000 of revenue. And I didn't know much about insurance. I was a consumer. I had car insurance and home insurance. That's about all I knew. So I got my insurance license, got my CPCU. I started working in the business. And as you may know, at an agency of that size, you wear many hats. So I've been the receptionist, I've been an account manager, I've been an agent, I've processed renewals and made cold calls and all the things somebody does in an insurance agency. I worked in the business for 5 years. December 31st of 2013, I bought King from my dad. We were 8 employees, $800,000 of revenue. And now it was time for me to think about what did I want King to look like now that I owned King rather than my parents. And what I decided is I wanted to build King on 3 pillars. The first pillar was operational excellence. I wanted us to be really, really good at what we did. I started making changes to how the business operated. And 2 years later, we won our first Best Practices Award. We won that award in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22. By 23, we had outgrown the award. We were about $35 million of revenue. At that time, the largest revenue size was $25 million. So we had just outgrown the award. 2021, we were top performer, top in the country for best practices. So number one in our revenue category. For me, it's bigger than a best practices insurance agency. What are your margins and how do you handle renewals and that sort of thing? It's a best practices business. That has everything to do with people. The people are the magic. Tools are as good as the hands that hold them. There's a variety of ways of saying it, but it's a people business. It's a relationship business. As I know, you know, it's all about the people. Sometimes it's your carrier partners. Sometimes it's the folks you work with. Sometimes it's your clients. It can be your vendors, but whatever it is, it's a people business, a relationship business. That's the magic. So that was pillar one. Pillar two was playing at a higher level. And what I found, particularly when I was an agent, is I wasn't able to compete with the larger agencies the way that I wanted to. They had carriers I didn't have. They had expertise I didn't have. They had technology I didn't have, capabilities basically that I didn't have. So I did my first acquisition in 2015. I did about 20 of them through 2020. And I did them every way I could think of. I've done bank loans, SBA loans. I've done splits with people. I mortgaged my house more than once. And if you're betting your house on it, you're pretty confident this is going to work out. I grew King to about $4 million of revenue. And I realized what got me here isn't going to get me there. I hired some investment bankers. I met with a bunch of private equity firms. That's how I met Kevin. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that in a moment. Today, we have offices up and down the East Coast, as far west as Ohio, Kentucky, Louisiana, and all sorts of different specialties. So much larger than we were in 2021. And the third pillar is teamwork. There's a difference between a team of all-stars and an all-star team. And the way this should work, if it's working right, is we complement each other. I make you better than you'd otherwise be. You make me better than I'd otherwise be. And if we can figure that out, we have a 2 and 2 is more than 4 sort of an outcome where we're able to achieve something together that neither of us could achieve on our own.
So first question I have is, why did you stop pursuing baseball? As a longtime baseball player myself, which, you know, I didn't get drafted out of high school. I played Division I. I had aspirations to hopefully get drafted out of college. And, you know, at 5'8", they told me that there was no Altuves at the time. So, you know, I hitched my wagon to the work world, even though I had a couple free agent offers to go to tryouts and whatnot. But, you know, that's the first question I have for you, because, you know, not to sidetrack from the business, but, you know, you got drafted out of high school. Did you not get drafted again out of college?
I did not get drafted again after college, but the way I wound up at the University of Kansas is I was in talks with the Kansas City Royals. The Royals invited me out to Kansas City to Kauffman Stadium to do something along the lines of NFL Combine sort of thing. They put you through your paces, you run, you throw, they time you, all of that sort of thing. And I thought I would go pretty high in the draft that year. That was after my sophomore year of college. That's not how that summer played out. I had told all of the colleges I wasn't interested because I was going to go play pro ball. But that draft didn't go the way I was hoping. And so my scout, who was from Kansas City, started calling around, because now it's June after the draft and I don't have anywhere to go to school in August. He started calling around. So I toured some schools in that area, and KU wound up being the best fit for me. So that's how I wound up at Kansas versus wherever else I would have wound up.
And the scouts didn't stay on you for all those years? Because obviously getting drafted out of high school is pretty good. You know? Yeah,
they did stay on me. My junior year, my first year at Kansas, I blew out my shoulder. I was playing first base. I was running to catch a pop-up. We were in Houston playing at the Houston tournament at the University of Houston. I was running to catch a pop-up on the first base side of the field, and it was like a waist-high fence. And I'm running, and I have my glove extended. I'm looking up. I hit the fence. I flip over it, and I had my right arm, my throwing arm down, kind of catching me against the fence. And as I flipped over, I heard a pop in my shoulder, tore my bicep tendon out of the bone, tore my rotator cuff. Oh yeah, it was. So I had two shoulder surgeries, and that was difficult. But I think every baseball player has the story of when they messed up their shoulder. So,
listen, I not to sidetrack, I had a very good career. I led my team in hitting my last year. I hit 316 overall, Division I, 360 in the 360 in the conference. And they just told me I was too small. But a couple guys wanted me to go for free agent tryouts. And, my son always tells me, who also played Division I baseball at Hofstra, Dad, you're crazy. Why didn't you go? But I saw the politics. The 6'1" guy from New York Tech got drafted, and he got $100,000 signing bonus, and I hit 100 points higher than him. but it was all about size back then. Now maybe not as much. But anyway, listen, I'm always curious about that, and I've never asked you that question. There's a good forum to do it. But listen, you as far as King's concerned, like I said in the opening, you've done a miraculous job. You built this company. You're the guy in the front on all the meetings with any of the sellers with us, and really, I mean, you've done a miraculous job. I know right now, you're still headquartered right in Gainesville, Florida, right, and pretty much the business looks like East Coast primarily, a little bit Midwest. I know we did a deal for you in Ohio, and you're kind of graveling out to the Southwest a little bit and some of the stuff that we're showing you. But pretty much, up and down the East Coast, you built it pretty fast from Gainesville up, and property casualty, play benefits, which is an area I know that you're trying to strengthen in. And, as you go along, what's the vision for King? I mean, do you see anything different? I mean, it's just harder to could be coast to coast when you only been doing it for 3-4 years like you have. But, the vision, I'm sure, is to keep going and keep cranking away and trying to build this thing, like some of your peers have, to, continue to be hundreds of millions into potentially $1 billion. Is that the strategy?
That's exactly the strategy. Right now, we're focused primarily in Eastern time, maybe a little Central time, Louisiana, parts of Tennessee, but for the most part, it's Eastern time. We will expand west as time passes. We have a great deal of opportunity still on the eastern side of the U.S. About 35% or so of the U.S. GDP comes from Eastern time zone, and we have so much opportunity there that I think we should fill that out before we start looking too far west. Although for the right opportunity, it's always about the people. So for the right opportunity, we would consider something further west. I just want to be mindful about being a mile wide and an inch thick unnecessarily.
No, and that's smart, and I think that's wise. Because you get into geography that you're not familiar with, you really have to have confidence in the leader that you would, bring in, because you're going to rely on them big time. You have, there are many platforms, right? If you start to build nationally. So you're still a young man, right? And I believe you told me you just turned 49 in 49. July, and young guy, a lot of runway left. King's got a lot of runway left. I mean, it's very competitive out there, the market, as you see. You participate in our processes, which are very competitive processes, and you fare very well. I mean, you're in the mix. I don't think there's anyone that ever comes out of a meeting that doesn't say, "Boy, Chad's a great guy." Okay, how do you see the market? How has it been since you've partnered with private equity? You did a recapitalization, the first one here earlier this year. If you want to speak to that a little bit, because now you got two private equities, which is very unique, by the way. Usually,
it is.
At your size, you have one and the next one, and then you get to bigger, and you'll see what's happening in the market there with some of the bigger guys that got into the billions and whatnot. That the options are much less. You have to either prepare to go public or potentially try to find another investor that's large enough to keep you private. And last but not least, obviously, sell to a strategic if that's something that becomes down the line. But you're far from that. I think you have a lot of runway to continue to run with these two sponsors, and potentially the next round even get another sponsor to stay private for a while. What's your thoughts around that?
I think that you're right. There's a lot of runway ahead of us. In the beginning, when I was just doing these deals on my own, it was a lot of bootstrap. I was getting bank loans. I was doing SBA loans. I was trying to piece it together as best I could. And I reached a place where I didn't have any more financial capacity to do that. But I knew how to do it. I had a lot to learn, but I knew how to do it. I could put the deals together. And when I first met Kevin, that was the obvious choice for me. I mean, if I'm being honest, that was the easiest business decision I've ever made. That was a complete no-brainer. And I'm really happy I made that partnership. Kevin and BHMS have been great partners from the beginning. And when we met, that's what I told him. I know how to do this. I can do this. I need your help. I need the financing, but I don't need you to teach me how to do it. And that was the nice compliment that I make him better and he makes me better. And that's how we got off the ground. And I certainly have learned a great deal from BHMS. Great people, very knowledgeable, and the process did improve. The offers improved, the structure improved, a lot of things improved. And we went from roughly $4 million of revenue, top line revenue, not EBITDA, but top line revenue, EBITDA, less than 2 million, to roughly 100 million of revenue in April of this year, April of 25. And then we had our first recap. That was with a firm called Lightyear. Lightyear's out of New York, and they brought a whole wealth of resources. But one thing on the point with BHMS, the reason we have two is BHMS didn't want to leave. We did well on the recap. They made the money they were looking to make, and they felt as though they would rather hang on to their position than part with it and take the cash, which I take as a compliment. We did a good job, and so good, in fact, that they don't want to go anywhere. And that's great. That's what success looks like.
100%. And obviously, I'm very close with Kevin. Kevin is a super dynamic, one of the best private equity guys out there. And, for me, there's different private equities at different levels that I work with because, the deals we do, we've done many multi-billion-dollar deals. But, Kevin was always a really good guy. And, as his firm grows too, to go to find a guy like you, which is hard to do for the private equities. The big challenge is that, so many private equities call me up and, they want to know what we're working on and what we have. But what I try to explain to them is it's not the business, it's the leader. I mean, if you don't have someone that's willing to take outside capital, which is, you're no longer you're drinking from a garden hose, you're drinking from a fire hose. Okay. Because,
I know it.
When they bring the money in, okay, they're not sitting around saying, "Hey, Chad, let me know if you're gonna spend any of this." They're saying, "Chad, every week, what do you got in pipeline? What do you got in LOI? What do you got in diligence? What's getting close to closing?" It's a constant. So you have a partner, you have a big brother that brings primarily capital, but also intellectual capital. Okay, and I think Kevin, one of the smarter private equity guys out there, and there's several others that we deal with and have done a lot with, and that I put, in the same category. Kevin is done unbelievably well. And, from Hill originally, which we were involved in that with him, to PCF, which is now Trucordia, okay, which we were involved in with him, put him together with Peter Foy. And now with you, I mean, he's done miraculously well. He's had great leaders and great success. And you stay where your success lies. I've learned a long time ago, run with the guys you succeed with. You don't need to constantly find new people, but, it's definitely a testament to your, success that Kevin wanted to stay involved in King because he saw the value in it, and he knows there's even a bigger bite of the apple for him. And Lightyear, a good partner as well. So you're a fortunate guy in many ways, but I'm not sure, with two private equities is, talking to you, that might be the unfortunate thing. But, as I say that jokingly, because I know how private equity thinks. But listen, I think, what I want people to know is, how good of a job you've done and how good of a guy you are, right? I constantly making some changes within your business, and, you're bringing in other leaders and whatnot to fill different roles. But, this business has your name all over it and your fingerprints all over it. Anybody that doesn't see that and doesn't understand that is missing the boat. A title's one thing. It's execution and leadership and what people view you as, which you're, check the box A+ on all those things. Okay, as a person. Is what matters. And you've done really, really well. I really was excited to have you on because I don't think a lot of people know you. More people probably than I know that do, but the people that I know that have been exposed to you, it's been nothing but super positive. And all we have is our reputation when you break it down. Even when you get in these deals and you don't win a deal because our processes are competitive, you always stand strong. And there's not one person to a man that ever comes out not having positive things to say about you. Okay, and I want you to
That's
know
so
that.
kind of you to say, Al. Thank you.
Well, I want you to know that not only because you're on this podcast, and as a, let's call it a friend, because I've become friends with all you guys, but you should
Yeah.
understand that. Okay, it's a big thing to have the solidify your reputation, and a lot of people will see this, and well, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more people you're going to get to know from this. So I appreciate you doing it. That being said, um, it's a competitive market out there, right? You've done very, very well. Um, who do you view as your competitors out there right now? Who do you see, not just from the M&A side, but the insurance side, people, accounts, those type of things? How do you view the landscape for competition right now?
Al, before I answer that, I want to thank you for the compliment. It's really kind of you. I appreciate the kind words. And coming from someone like you with the reputation you have in the industry, it's a big deal. It means a lot. So thank you for saying that. I really
My pleasure,
appreciate the
buddy.
kind words.
My pleasure.
As far as competition goes, I know the folks that are in the industry, the folks I go up with, and they're the same folks that you interact with, the names in the industry. They're all good people. So whenever that sort of thing comes up, I don't ever have something wrong to say about anyone. We're different, and you might prefer this person over that person because we're two different people, but that's not to say someone's better than someone else. We're just different. And if this person's a fit for you, then I'm probably not going to be. And if I'm a fit for you, someone else probably isn't going to be. But again, it's not because someone's better than someone else. It's just because we're different people. And that's how it works. That's what makes the world go round. So as far as competitors go, we certainly have room for improvement, but the way I think about it is I want us, King, to be as good as we can be. And there's a lot of room for improvement there at 100 million or 120 million. We've come a long way from 4 million when I first met Kevin. But as you alluded to earlier, we have a lot of room ahead of us to get to several hundred million or a billion or maybe multiple billion one day. We'll see. A lot of room for improvement there. So I don't do a lot of comparing in that way, but there of course is some comparison as far as what can we offer, what tools do we have, what tools do we not have, vertical specialties, that sort of thing. And you can think about that a few different ways. On the one hand, the folks that have all the answers and have it all built out, well, they're much bigger, and maybe you're a little late to the party as far as the investment goes there. And for someone like King, who's not as built out as those much larger agencies, the downside is we're not as built out. The upside is building it out is how the company grows, is how that value is created, and you double, triple, quadruple your investment is in that building out of the company. So it's really just a matter of perspective.
Well, you're still very ground floor, and I know you're not super hands on the insurance side of things. So from your producers, who they're beating their heads up against and whatnot, it's similar people to you. I guess it's really comes down to what you want King to be. You're going to be like the rest of them, probably a small to mid market commercial business. Okay. Both on the PNC and the health side, the employee benefits side. Create the verticals, like you said. You met a gentleman from me yesterday who's a management liability specialist and a program specialist. Those are the additives that kind of diversify you, and help you build from others. But you're kind of all doing the same thing. Okay. Competing for M&A, you're right in the middle of that. Competing for people and accounts and whatnot, it's probably the same people, like you said, that you're competing for in M&A. And a lot of these are people that I already did podcasts with, and a lot of these are people that your peers that you see at these industry events, and speak very well of you, and vice versa. So is your vision to keep King pretty much, even Brown and Brown, when Powell Brown did a podcast with me a couple weeks back, he said, we're a middle market broker. He doesn't view himself as a large account broker. Even they do large accounts. He feels like the addition of risk strategies really helps them, even because that was more Mike Christian's background, was all alternative risk, captives, large accounts, competing against Marsh, Aon Willis. I don't think you probably view yourself ever like that. You probably view yourself continuing to build in the middle market, maybe the upper middle market, lower middle market, and small business environment. Is that pretty accurate?
I think that's exactly right. Yeah. Middle market, lower middle market, even small business to some degree. Yes, for sure. I think that we are currently community agency focused. So it's a lot of smaller towns, smaller agencies, and really focusing on that. And if we can bring additional horsepower and resources to those folks, we can really outperform in those communities without losing that touch, that interaction that people have with their agents and with their agencies, that sometimes the really big agencies can get a little cold and you lose that personal connection, that personal touch, which I think is some intangible value that we can bring that maybe other folks don't.
Well, I think, your competitors, what has evolved in insurance brokerage and these what we call growth strategies, and you're one of them, has been that it's no longer just bringing in insurance related products, but financial products like full financial services. And we've had a lot to do with a lot of them, but everything they were outsourcing, like the surety, for example, like wealth management was a big thing. I had the conversation with Powell Brown, and I said, I'm not familiar whether Brown, who's a $7 billion company now, it really ever got into the wealth management. And he said, no, because we haven't. We have pockets of it now with Risk Strategies and what they did, but he hasn't made a conscious effort. But a lot of your competitors, ones that aren't even that much bigger than you, because you're super ground floor still, which is a lot of advantages to that, as you said, especially on the equity rise. Okay, have been bringing in these other verticals. Are you looking at any of these other verticals, or do you keep your eye on the wealth management, the surety that the people have brought in, actuarial firms, auditing firms? I sold one tax advisory firm into one because they had a ton of personal lines and thought there could be a lot of synergies there on the cross sell. Are you pretty much staying within your core, down the middle of the road, P&C, I know you're trying to build the employee benefits, definitely different niches and in the commercial side and whatnot, but are you looking at some of these ancillary things?
Right now, we're sticking to our knitting. It's going to be primarily insurance, P&C insurance, commercial and personal, and then benefits. And as you mentioned, I would like to build out the benefits more than what it is now. We also need to grow our producer base. And so we're looking at how to do that effectively. We've brought on some new folks. There's been some change in the industry, and change creates opportunities. So we've had an opportunity to bring on some folks from some other much larger firms that are either being acquired by strategics or are going through their own changes. And with that, we have gotten a chance to bring them on to a much smaller platform, King, from where they were. And then really focusing on building that out. The four big factors that drive the value of insurance agencies, as I see this, is inorganic growth, what you and I do together, organic growth, which is what I'm talking about with producers and verticals and that sort of thing, strength of team. So these opportunities to bring in people from other areas. When King was much smaller, I would get asked sometimes, what happens if something happens to you? You get struck by lightning, then what? And at $4 million of revenue, I didn't have a great answer to that. So that has changed over time. And then the fourth piece is integration. And I think everybody's on the integration page at this point. But at one point in time, people want integrating. And I think if you can hit those four things, those are the big four. And there are other factors, personal versus commercial. There's some other things. But if those first four aren't in place, you're really not going to have a whole lot of further conversation. So that's what I'm sticking to. That's what we're sticking to. And then more specifically, the insurance piece primarily with a few caveats here and there.
Well, the real evolution over the last, let's say, 12 or 13 years with private equity capital that's behind all of you guys, that is 45 to 50 of you, was originally the decentralized model. That's what caught everybody's eye, right? Because it was for years and years and years, the buyers, and they're still good buyers, the publics, large privates, et cetera, that were doing all the buying for years and investing in folks like King at $4 million, that type of thing. That's what was going on. Now, throw in the private equity, all these, the people in your space, all your peer group or insurance brokers in his own right, is basically entrepreneurs and family businesses. And when you start to create a model that's more decentralized and more entrepreneurial, that's what attracted and really sprungboard the acquisitions in this industry. That really took the acquisition model in private equity back to another level. Okay. And yes, the interesting thing this industry is very cyclical. I've been through many cycles. Okay. Where now that it started that way with the decentralized model, but now it's totally about integration and organic growth. Because if you don't have both, your next investor, okay, and you'll probably be able to stay private with the next investor at your size, the next round, you'll be still at a good size. If you don't have that, they're not going to want it. So you're totally right. Those are four pillars. Everyone knows you're acquiring. They want to see it work. They want to see it work. They want to see
the way that I present it to those folks, the folks who are acquiring, that's how I present it. This is how the next private equity firm is going to view King. And one of my responsibilities of many is to make sure that our partner's investment in King, the stock, performs as well as it possibly can. How does it perform as well as it possibly can? Well, there's many answers to that, but these four things are critical. And so whenever we have some sort of conversation around changing agency management systems or same IT or same HR, et cetera, all of it comes back to these four things. One of them is integration. This is why we integrate. This is why everyone's name is King. It's not because of my ego. It's because we need to integrate for the value of the shares to the next private equity firm, which ultimately means their investment in King. And so when I present it that way, this is about having your investment perform the best it possibly can. It helps align us, and it helps eliminate that what can turn into a back and forth around, I don't want to switch agency management systems. I don't want my website to change, whatever these things are.
Or your name.
If they understand why we're doing that, it really helps.
Or your name, because, when this all first started, the big thing was least change of anything, decentralized. Keep your name, keep your computer system, keep your everything. Now you got to bring it all together, because you're right. The value of that equity is looking like one unified business, one name, one computer system, people working together, cross-selling, organic growth, integration. It's changed. And it's interesting how it's evolved, because, that was a big selling point when it first came out. The decentralized model, least change of everything. That was Greg Williams's motto, power of the partnership. I don't want to change anything, other than doing a press release. A lot of people still don't do press releases in these. They don't want to disrupt anything, and it makes sense in a lot of ways. Don't fix it if it's not broken. Okay, you're spending millions of dollars on these acquisitions, but in order, that equity is the secret sauce. That's the gift that keeps on giving, the purchase price that never ends, and that's the generational worth creator. And everyone really, when they join a King or any of these, is working together for the next event. That's really what you're all doing. You're working for the next event because everybody's a shareholder, and that's the meaningful piece of this that people need to really understand. And believe it or not, a lot of people don't understand the equity, because they only know, is it liquid? When can I trade it? And you have to educate. Sika Fletcher, we do a huge part of our process is educating the client on the equity, and obviously all the things we've done, investments we've made, money we've brought in, recapitalizations we've done and continue to do is really the driver of making them understand this isn't just a deal. Okay. This is something that is, repositioning your asset to grow faster and create value faster. So the gal that wants to say, give me as much money as I can and I want to walk out today, there's no place for that anymore, unfortunately. But there's a lot still out there, because the industry, for the most part, has aged. But now a lot of new people are starting to finally come in to understand what the value is of that equity. So yeah, you hit it well, Chad. You hit the points, and I think you certainly answered the question that I had on that. And I know that you believe that you're pretty much still in the bottom of the first.
I think we're very early. Yeah, Yeah, we're very early in the process, and uh, the way that I view my role now is really two things. One is allocation of capital, making sure that we're investing those private equity dollars the right way so we can get that return. And two is keeping people motivated. As I'm sure you know, probably better than anyone, people get their big check, and if they were ever doing it for the money, they're not doing it for the money anymore. So how do you keep them engaged, and how do you keep them really all rowing in the same direction? And I think working towards the recap is really it. And that's to everyone's benefit. Our capital structure is very clean and simple. We have one class of stock. It's all the same. It's interchangeable. There's no preferreds. There's no picks. There's no moving parts. It's very clean and simple. And that keeps everybody hopefully aligned. And we are all working for that recap. And whenever those sticking points can come up about integration, changing agency management systems, whatever it is, I share with them a story I'm going to share with you now. When my kids were little, they used to ask me questions anyone's kids would ask, like, why do I got to eat my vegetables? Or why do I have a bedtime? Why do I do my homework? And I would tell them it's the same answer as why I buy you birthday presents and why I take you to Disney World. It's because I love you. And if I didn't love you, I wouldn't care. And I wouldn't take you to Disney, and I wouldn't make you eat your vegetables either. And in this context, the why is I want your investment in King to perform the best it possibly can. And your investment's the same as my investment, the same as the private equity firm's investment. It's all the same. But that's why anything. So when we get into why do we have to change my website? Why do we have to go on the same agent management system? Whatever these why questions are, I tell them, you don't ever need to ask me why. You know why. 100% of the time, that's why. It helps to really crystallize and condense the concepts to this is not you against me. I want your investment to perform phenomenally well. This is why we're doing it. But it's always why anything. That's why. You put it in terms of we're all working towards the recap. That's the same thing, different words, but the same message.
Yeah, well, that's what it really is. Everyone now is a shareholder. That's what aligns everybody. You say what keeps incented. That's what keeps them incented. Plus, the way these deals are structured, 3 years of growth, you get additional purchase price. So you're really getting 100% of the value, what the business looks like at closing up front. You know, combination, mostly cash and a small percentage of stock, where most of our deals, that small percentage of stock, you know, outgrows the whole value if it's done properly. Yeah, there's some people, there's no guarantees and whatnot. You got to continue to grow. And, you know, I think King's on that right path, okay, as far as, you know, accelerating into where people are going to get their value out of it. But, you know, bottom line here is there, you know, there's multiple ways to skin the cat here and create value for yourself in these deals that never really were there before. And certainly, you know, people get fooled. They say, well, I just want to get my money and my cash. And even the publics, and we do business with Brown and Gallagher and Marsh Agency, even them, you know, they're not looking for people that want to go fishing, just take their money and go. They're looking for people that want to be part of something. Everybody's looking for partners. And in the private equity backed model, you are a partner and you're looked at like that. You know, and that's the differentiator that's changed the industry. That little piece of equity in these deals has changed the whole industry over the last 12, 13 years. Okay. And that's the reality.
I think you're 100% right. Yeah. I think that's changed everything. And I think another differentiator with King is we're an entrepreneurial place. I'm an entrepreneurial guy. The people we partner with are entrepreneurs. That's why they have their own agencies. If they wanted a big corporate job, they could go get a big corporate job. There's a reason they don't have one. And sometimes I see that not being a fit when the wrong person partners with the big agency. The big agency can sometimes turn into a big corporation, and then you're reporting to your manager and you got to wear a tie and your sales meetings on Wednesday and all of that kind of thing. And it can get a little too corporate. And so there is that cultural piece. And I want to be really careful about maintaining our culture, keeping our culture unique and keeping it what it is. But it's like the earlier point, it's not that someone's necessarily better than someone else. It's just that we're different. And I just want to keep us what we are, what we've been, and keep that culture, because for the right person, it's the right fit. It's perfect. And different people are different. And that's what makes the world go round. That's great. But we are who we are. And I don't want to lose that and turn into a big corporation where you lose that personality, that culture.
No. And I think as long as you maintain that thought process. And listen, Mike Christian, great friend of mine, he really created a great entrepreneurial firm. But when you get big, there's changes you have to make. To be more compliant and things and whatnot. So you have to roll with the punches. But I do think that what you're doing with King is everything you said and more. And like I said, I want to stress on this podcast that the thing that I admire most is the job that you have done. Okay, the role you're playing now suits you well. Don't get caught up by titles or anything else. You are the leader here. Okay, you're the guy that really took the risk. You're the guy's name is on the door, and they're just putting good people around you to help support some of the things that maybe you want to do or not want to do, but what you are doing, you're doing really well. Okay, and you need to know that, because this comes from a guy, like you said, not that I'm the end all, but I got 37 years in this thing. I've seen a lot. I know a ton of people. They all know me. And I appreciate watching what you've done and how you've gotten to where you are. Okay, because you're probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met in business and in life. And I kid with you and tell you, don't be so nice all the time. Be a little more grittier. Be a little tougher. Throw your elbows around. You're a big boy, right? Mr. Basketball, right? First base. Okay? Throw those elbows around. Don't let anybody push you one way or the other. Stand your ground, because you got a lot to bring to the table, buddy. And you've done a miraculous job. And I really, really appreciate the time we're spending here today. And I think I've covered a lot of my questions, unless you have anything else that you want to share or you want to discuss. But I thought this was awesome.
Thanks, Al. I really appreciate the kind words. I really appreciate our friendship. I think so highly of you. You're a legend in this industry. And so compliment from you means a great deal. It's always a pleasure seeing you. It's always a pleasure spending time with you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
It was my pleasure. And listen, let's just keep going.
All right, will do.
For more information about your unique situation, please contact Sika Fletcher or visit us at www.sikafletcher.com. All opinions expressed by the host and guests are their own and are not necessarily those of Sika Fletcher. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as professional advice. Sika Fletcher employees and clients may have positions in the firms discussed in this podcast. Any information provided is subject to change and does not constitute an offer to purchase or sell any financial product. Sika Fletcher LLC does not underwrite securities, nor advise on, nor affect transactions in securities for the account of others.